Hello, good morning everyone. This is a game I played this morning against a 2109 player on chess.com. And he opened with e4, c5, hitting the center. You know, the key to improving quickly at chess is to look at principles that will help you in all of the games you play. And really, every single game has so much instruction inside of it when you know what to look for. All right, so e6, preparing, opens the bishop, guards d5, some influence on the center. Pawn takes, knight develops, hitting the knight. It's pretty forceful. If the knight takes, I will recapture with this pawn and strengthen the center. All right, he wants to defend the d5 square as well. I bring my queen out to defend e5, the e5 square, so I can bring my knight out, right? You need to develop your pieces, right? And you need to see what's stopping that development without knowing the opening, right? I don't study openings, as you all know. So, which often means we're going to get into unknown positions fairly quickly, but eventually you're going to get into an unknown position. And it also tends to confuse players who are playing down known opening lines, who aren't good enough to capitalize on the weaknesses. And generally you have to be at a master level to really capitalize on subtle suboptimal moves out of the opening. So all right, so knight to c3. Okay, he can always hit my queen here, right? You always have to be cognizant of little guys harassing big guys, right? Or power move number 2, attack on the queen, or power move number 5. And all right, so you have to be aware of that and know what you're going to do if your opponent does that. And I do it as a lure as well. You can do these things as lures, but you have to be really careful. You have to really know what's going on. So if he does hit my queen, I'm going to tuck it in here, and then I'll be able to chase it out with, chase the knight out with a6, and then bring my queen back. And I gain a little space with that little pawn move. All right, so he develops his bishop. I develop my bishop with a threat, right? What is the threat? Every time your opponent moves, what is the threat? It's the key thing. So I'm pinning the knight, power move number 4, which allows me to capture the pawn. All right, so he defends the pawn, and now I stop him from hitting my queen, because that ain't going to happen. And I don't want my queen to move now. I'm not going to gain much out of that tempo. All right, I castle. And now he starts dancing, right? Now we have the cat and mouse play, right? We've both castled. I still need to develop my light squared bishop. And we need to determine where our long range attack plans will be. So you generally will attack where your pieces are already attacking from out of the opening, right? So for white, you know, his light squared bishop is already hitting my king side, so his attack will probably be on the king side. So we still have the center. The center can be resolved, you know, depending on how these pawn moves, but because they have a lot of options, we don't really know how that's going to pan out. So you need to determine where you will mobilize your pieces to create a force majority, right? Time, space, force, right? And pawn structure, the basic elements of the game and how you determine things and what you're trying to create. So he's probably, this knight move is to mobilize to the king side. I, on the other hand, don't really have a long-term attack plan yet. Yeah, so sometimes it will just be, you know, bobbing and weaving, and, you know, hoping to gain a little tactical advantage somewhere, or a strategic advantage if something materializes, or you see some way of doing that based on your opponent's moves. And now we go in for the bishop here with the knight here. I'm going into enemy territory, and I have an attack on the pawn, but it probably won't work because you can pin it. So let's see what he does. Does he allow me to capture the bishop? And he does. So I'll take the bishop pair. I mean, this is my simplistic thinking. If I don't see a threat, a counter threat within 2 moves, generally you're okay because you'll be able to recover. So it takes 2 or 3 moves for your opponent to, unless, if you can see the danger in 1 move, of course, right? Yeah, most things in chess happen within 1 and 2 moves. All right, so pawn to f4. And now we have a threat, right? e5 on my knight. I don't want to dance, so I'm going to defend that square. Probably allowing it was possible too, but, this is a 10-minute game. I don't want to have to think too deeply. And, yeah, just defending my center. And keeping the knight there. Rook to f2. He wants to double his rooks probably, yeah? Maybe open up the f file. And now I need to develop my bishop and go for another attack. So that's the other thing, right? Gang attacks. I'm already hitting this pawn once. He can't push it. I'll win a pawn here. So apply more pressure, right? Once you're attacking something, and you have to, on defensive side, you have to really see when your opponent is attacking something, when something's engaged, how quickly he can bring another man into that attack. That's critical. All right, so I have time. That's the other thing. So he can play g5 now, right? Power move number 5, hitting my knight. But 1 tempo ahead on the pawn. Tempos are everything. 1 tempo is enough to win a game. That's a time advantage. Okay, so he's got to deal with that, and he defends it with the knight. And now you always look at the power move features in a position. He's got an undefended knight, power move number 3. And it's on a diagonal with the rook. Do I have a dark squared bishop? I do. So I can see that I can pin the knight. And now he's got this threat. That's the other thing. I can't dance over here. I mean, I could always swing back, which is very good, but I do that now, take that away from him in order to actually create the pin. And now this is the real reason for making that move. So I take the attack on the knight away, and if he doesn't see it, I'll go for the pin, which he doesn't. So I go for the pin. With tempo, that knight needs to be move or be defended. He can't move. I get the rook, so he defends it. And now the other thing we've accomplished, divide and conquer, right? So piece networking or piece coordination, batteries, they increase the power of your pieces. So if you see that, you want to try to break that up. Divide and conquers. Now his rooks aren't united. I have the attack tempo on the knight. I can capture it when I want. And now I go for my ultimate goal, which is to get this pawn. And he's allowed all this because I've been able to gain the initiative by focusing on his weaknesses and what I could create threats on. I hit the queen, and he moves. And now I take the knight. He takes, and I get the queen. I get the pawn. So again, his coordination is bad. The rook is undefended now. And we're taking him apart slowly, right? All right, so he moves. I'll just show you the rest of the game. So now I'm up, how many pawns? It's 6 against 7. Okay, I'm only up a pawn. So the other thing that is to be noticed here, his attack was premature. And that's how most players lose, really, I would say, as a generality. You're pushing too hard and your attack isn't planned well enough. You're not supporting it. All right, so now I'm going to try and win another pawn. I don't know if I can get away with this, actually. I thought of this during the game. So he moves the rook. I don't know what would have happened if he had gone here and then pin. I'm not sure it'll work. I'd have to go back and look at that. But I do get the pawn now. I think he might even be able to pin with the queen, because that bishop's undefended. See, he gains a tempo. I was worried about that during the game, but I just thought I could still maybe get another pawn, and it might be worth it. And I always have the attack on this rook with my knight, right? So you're always looking at that. Again, power move number 5. So I don't think I can't win that pawn just yet. So because he could maybe trap it. I don't know. So I didn't go for that. And you also want to, stay focused on the center, stay focused on greater threats. So now we're up 2 pawns, right? So if I can parry all of his threats now, he's going to come at me and then parry them and then go into a 1 endgame, right? I want to trade pieces now at all costs. I want to trade pieces, and I'll have the extra pawn in the endgame, which will become a queen. So these are themes that occur in all games, right? They're just repeating and repeating, and but the creativity is how you do that, how you manipulate those variables in each game. All right, so he goes back, and now I'm defending. For another reason, I'm slowing his attack down. He can't play f5 just yet, right? I'll lose a pawn. And I actually want to chase his knight out, so he can't come to the square. All right, so he's continuing his attack now with this pawn storm on my king side. And this is the other thing. And this comes with experience. You have to calculate and see whose attack is going to land first. I mean, that's everything. You don't want to over-defend or defend prematurely or waste moves on defense if you can get away with it, right? You want to ignore your opponent's attack if you can. And if you determine you can, well, then you proceed with yours, and you get attack tempos instead of defensive tempos. All right, so I develop my rook to defend not only this pawn, but this bishop, since I'm anticipating pushing here. That bishop will be undefended for 1 tempo. If he captures, I'll be able to recapture, and it'll be defended by the rook. All right, so he's going for it. And now I have to see how quickly can he gang up on the h7 pawn, right? 1 move here with the rook. It's going to take him 1-2 and 1-2 with the queen. So that's two tempi, right? 2 tempos. So I have to make sure that my threats will be greater within those 2 tempos. So now I'm, proceeding with my plan. I need to create a passed pawn or win more pawns. Potential battery with my queen and bishop. Things you learn as beginners, right? The batteries, the basic mate threats, you continue to use as you improve. It doesn't matter, right? Grandmasters, Carlsen, they all use the basic stuff, all the basic mates to create those threats and to potentially mate. Okay, so he's coming in, and all right, he's got a check now. So if my bishop's undefended, so his queen can take. So if I take and he takes, I mess up my pawn structure. So it's a bad trade-off. So I think I take the pawn. Yeah, I calculated I could probably get away with it. So I get another pawn. And now he throws the check in, right? And now my king goes to the dark square. So I have to now be careful because he has a dark squared bishop. I have to really be careful about allowing checks here because that could be mate, right? So you always have to keep that in mind. So he goes forward to check me again, but hey, I think closing would be okay. All right, so he checks me. I back off. He throws the in-between move in because I'm attacking his rook, but he throws the check in. And now I have to advance my pawns, right? So you see your strength. My main strength right now is that I have extra pawns. I have 2 passed pawns in the center. So, from Jeremy Silman's book, well, they determined this even before his book, but you amplify your strengths, right? So if you have a spatial advantage, you try to get more space, right? If you have an advantage in force, well, then you try to find a tactic. Eventually, everything reduces to tactics. You have to win material or mate the king, which are tactical moves. All right, so now he's getting ready with his plan to gang up on the h7 pawn. So I have to make sure I'm 1 tempo ahead and don't allow that. So I push the pawn and at the same time proceed with your plan. Hit the bishop, mainly to open up this diagonal to the rook, right, to keep him dancing, to not allow that doubling up. All right, so he slides back, and I also have to maybe keep an eye on that diagonal. No, not really. I'm covered. All right, so he moves again, and now I'm going for, well, I want to keep pushing, right? I've calculated that. I think I can get away with it. I think it'll take him too long to get in there. I can keep having threats. The other thing that does, it allows a check with my queen here. So anyway, the time is running down. I think he has 4 minutes here, and I have 2. And so the moves are going to become weaker on both sides. With the time pressure, I've got 2 attacks. I have 2 attackers on the bishop. He has 2 defenders, but now he took a defender off, and so this is just blunders. I'm taking this, and that was he should have probably just taken the pawn and put threat on my bishop. But so anyway, these are just blunders, and I'll just show you the rest of the. Actually, he resigns now because he lost the piece, and he knows what's going to happen. I have enough time. So anyway, there was a lot there, but these things, these themes appear in all games, and you have to look at chess thematically in order to improve more quickly. I hope you got something out of it, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Take care.